welcome to another edition of Straight from the Loading Dock. My name's George Pofolk. I'm with Cresco Real Estate, Cushman & Wakefield in Cleveland. Today I have with me Leslie Biskner, CCIM with Cooperative Business Services. Oh, and the proud pin-wearing CCIM. And your CBS. You got the dual lapel going. That's awesome.
Yeah, I got all the jewels.
So Leslie, I got to know you back, plus or minus 2012, 2013, back when I was the president of the Ohio chapter of CCIM. So we kind of go back, quite a few years, but more recently over the last year or so, kind of getting to know you a little bit better and learn more about you and everything that you're doing. So I thought, great time to have somebody on a podcast with your knowledge. So welcome.
I love it. I'm ready.
That's awesome. So I'm gonna start with some of the easy softball layup. So as you and I have been talking, you're you love to travel, and one of the things that I love that we talked about is that you like to go to a lot of the national parks. What are your top 2 or 3 national parks that you've been to?
Well, I love that question because travel is my life outside of work, I suppose. But probably my favorite national park was probably Yellowstone. Although on the southwest journey to go see the Grand Tetons, which is at the bottom end of Yellowstone, there were quite a few Canadian wildfires that were blowing smoke into the area. So when we got to the Tetons, we couldn't see the mountains.
Oh,
that was kind of a surprise. I suppose if we were watching the news, we would have known that. But and my second favorite park to date has to be White Sands National Park, which used to be a recreational area. It was recently named a national park, and I've never in my life seen anything that looked like that. Just fields of white sand as far as the eye could see, and I hiked for 4 miles in my bare feet.
Ooh. And because it was so soft and
soft, and it was so easy to do it. It was so cool. So thank you. It was great.
That's awesome. So how many national parks have you been to, you think?
Including the Cuyahoga Valley National Park right here in Ohio. Probably 32, 33. That doesn't account for national monuments, national preservation areas. That's just like the main parks that you would think of, like Big Bend National Park in Texas or Congaree National Park, a little further east from us.
So how many are left on the list?
Well, I think there's 68 total. The one in West Virginia is the most recent, and I did go to that one and rafted on the river and climbed the bridge that they have across where you're like roped in and it's 24 inches wide. So I'm not afraid of heights, but I'm afraid of edges and ledges.
That's great. So you're almost halfway there. But that's that has to be outstanding. Yes, Alaska's a beautiful country. I was there this summer.
I know, it's why I mentioned it. I love it.
Yeah. So you and I, as I mentioned earlier, we kind of got to know each other through CCIM, and I know that you're extremely active at the local level on the board of directors at the state chapter, and then you're also heavily involved at the national level. So I guess maybe kind of walk the audience through. So what is a CCIM, and what does that mean to to people when they see that?
So it means a lot of things to a lot of people, but at the end of the day, when you have the CCIM designation, and you know this as much as I do, we're considered the foremost experts in commercial real estate. I mean, we've gone the extra mile to get additional education. I think with the core courses through the Institute, we sat through an extra 200 hours of classroom training, five long exams, continual education classes through Ward. I also went through the JWL Leadership Academy and took on that leadership challenge, hence the reason why I'm currently 2025 Institute's marketing chair. I also was the regional vice president, which includes some of our neighboring states like Michigan, and have really enjoyed the friendships more than anything. The business is great. CCIMs do more deals. That's a fact. But it's the friendships that I've made over the years that's been most important to me. So, but we've kind of set the bar for commercial real estate education and networking. We do some fun things here in the state of Ohio, and I can't say that there's been a forum or governance meeting that I've missed in years. And even next week, I'm flying to Chicago for the NAR C5 plus CCIM Summit, and really looking forward to connecting with my peers there as well.
Yeah, and oftentimes, we kind of sit there and say, the CCIM, it helps basically give you like a master's in commercial real estate. This October, I will be celebrating my 20th year as a CCIM. I had to go quickly look at my plaque that's kind of behind me. So I do my 20th year.
A party for you.
Yeah, major milestone. I think only I still have one child that is under the age of 20. So the other two were, I guess they were newborns when I was going through this journey back in the day.
Oh, wow, that's awesome! Thanks for sharing.
So you're with Cooperative Business Services. Can you tell me a little bit about who you are, what and what you do?
Sure, thank you. Well, the journey for me here started 19 years ago when we were a small company. I don't even know if we were 3 years old, so we were just toddlers. And when I came on board and started the Columbus office, or Central Ohio office, I guess would be more appropriate, we had 22 credit unions as part of our group. So CBS is actually owned by credit unions, and we partner with the credit unions nationally to do commercial real estate lending. And today we've grown to north of 150 credit unions. We're in multiple states. It's been quite a journey. Credit unions are just a little bit different than banks. They do carry a nonprofit status, which seems to be a surprise to people that I talk to about.
Yeah, very much so.
They may not know about credit unions. When you belong to a credit union, you're actually part of the family. You're an owner, and it's been quite a roller coaster. I mean, I started here prior to our recession in 2008 and 9, and we flourished. And then I would say, even when the interest rates changed, people still reached out to the credit unions. They love the hometown feel, I guess is a good way to put it.
Oh, and so I'm very family, very, very family oriented. Everybody knows your name, and it kind of makes you feel a little, special and important, what have you.
Yeah. Well, if they can't remember the company name and they can't remember how to pronounce my name, it just ends up being, call Biskner. I've ever said that loud before. It's great.
And so I'm a small entrepreneurial company. I'm a manufacturing operation. And I've been leasing for many years, and I want to buy my own building. So I want to buy let's call it a 15,000 square foot building, for roughly like $600,000. And it'll be obviously owner occupied. What would I do?
So right out of the gate, Georgie said that it was going to be an owner-occupied property, manufacturing. And so immediately my mind turns to using the SBA 504 program. And a lot of people are a little bit fearful. They've heard rumors that, it's cumbersome, it costs more money, it takes more time. But really what it does is it gives the buyer of the building an advantage because they only have to bring 10% in of their own cash to potentially buy that $600,000 property, which means they're setting aside more money for operations, right? And liquidity is key in any business and any real estate transaction. And I actually applaud the 504 program. I love doing the 504 program. I've got an award over here that shows you that I was the SBA Lender of the Year once. So there's a little piece of memorabilia.
That's
I
outstanding.
do love it. And then so didn't think I'd get a workout during this show. So hey, it's great. So I always, in the simplistic form, I always like to explain to a potential borrower, your client, anybody's client, that think of the SBA program as an apple pie, and there's only 3 slices. The first slice is the 10% slice that the borrower brings to the table, the 10% down payment. 50% of the pie, literally a half of it, is going to be the portion of the loan that the credit unions finance. And 40% of the loan will be through the SBA. Now, people always say, oh, do I have to wait for the SBA to close the loan in order to buy the building? Because there's always a consideration of timing, right? When you're in contract to buy a building, the seller wants to sell it. So they don't want to hear about any delays. So really what happens out of the gate is that my credit unions will fund the full 90% on closing day. And then sometime between 30 and let's just say 90 days later, the SBA will do a second closing on their 40%. It's a lot to take in for a short period of time that we have today, but it's a really great way to buy a $600,000 building or a $4 million building. It's a lot of people, you'd be surprised, will qualify for that program. And our partners that we work with on the SBA side are amazing. So it goes really smoothly. Now, here's the bonus. On the SBA side of the loan, it's a 25-year fixed rate note, and it's also amortized over 25 years. So you tell me any lender in the world that does a commercial loan that's fixed and amortized for 25 years.
Yeah, it's extremely attractive, especially in today's environment. So and one of the things that is kind of important to talk about, I like the fact when you said that the credit unions close on the loan and then ultimately get taken back out by the SBA, because when in today's environment, the sales side of things, there are many buyers out there looking. So if you had to do 90 days of due diligence, that tends to maybe, your business terms aren't as friendly to sellers. So it kind of concerns them a little bit, and they may bypass you and go to the next buyer.
I know, it's different than buying a home, right? I mean, you can write a plea to the seller of the home and say, I've got 3 children, their cousins live 3 doors down, and basically beg them to, sell it, at least when it was in a more competitive times for, homes.
Right.
But on the commercial side, I mean, sometimes turnaround makes a difference. So, if you can't do a conventional loan and you need to conserve your cash, the SBA is a really great way to go. You just need to find the right partner to do it with.
Right. So you also kind of mentioned liquidity. What's the importance of, being liquid?
So, when we're analyzing a deal, and my underwriters will tell you the same thing, at the end of the day, after your funds go out for the down payment, whatever it might be, it could be 20%, 25%, even 35% in some cases. We want to make sure that you've got some money left over. If you're an owner-occupier, we want to make sure that you can make payroll over the next 90 days. We want to make sure that you have funds available for anything unexpected. Like we think about snow plowing a big giant parking lot, but somebody else may not, right? So we account for those types of expenses when we're doing our underwriting. But generally speaking, I would say 6 months of principal and interest is what we like to see remaining in somebody's bank accounts at the end of the day, so that we know they've got funds, rainy day funds, and funds for anything that might come up unexpected. Maybe the moving costs are more than they expected, or it could be anything really. So that is really important. We don't want a person to be wiped out of cash when they close on a real estate transaction. Now, on the other hand, we have some sophisticated borrowers, and they're like, if my money is sitting in my bank account, it's not working for me, right? And that is true. So let's just hope if it's sitting in your bank account, your credit union account, wherever it is, it's earning a little bit of interest and you have it readily available in case an emergency comes up. But we get it. We know you need your money to work for you. So, we try to look at what's going to make the deal work.
Right.
Great question.
So when you're looking at these deals, are you doing recourse, non-recourse, and then can you explain to the audience what's the difference between those?
Sure. Excellent question, because we get asked that a lot. The big question is do I not need to sign personally on the debt? Unless you're Nestle, you're probably going to have to sign. I'm thinking chocolate, right? You're probably going to have to sign on the debt personally. Now, that's not to say that's who the borrower is. The borrower is actually going to be the LLC or the company that is created or has been previously created to buy the real estate. So on any type of transaction, really, if we were to do what's considered a non-recourse loan where there's not personal signature on the debt, the maximum loan to value that most lenders, not just our credit unions, will do is 65%. So if the building is $1 million, that means we can lend $650,000. If it's a non-recourse loan, let's just say all the magical stars align and we're okay to just lend on the asset versus, the credit of the person themselves. We could go as high as 75% on a traditional investment property and as high as 80% or even 90% on owner occupied. So there is a little bit of a leverage difference between recourse and non-recourse loans. And George, honestly, credit unions are fairly new to the non-recourse lending business. They community-based. We want to see, borrowers becoming members of our credit unions, right? And belonging to the community. But that's not to say that we don't have a lot of programs where the borrowers are coming out of California and New York, because here in the Midwest, the cap rates are better, right? I don't have to tell you that. You know that.
I absolutely agree with that.
I'll interview you on my next podcast. I don't have a podcast, but we could talk about that.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned that, because, with all the competition on the East Coast and Chicago and some of the, the markets, the more attractive markets, we definitely are getting,
It's hot and happening here.
It is. So, when we're kind of working with buyers, one of the things, I mean, we're not necessarily asking some of the hard hitting questions like, can you afford this building? We know them. We've been, friendly with them. We're showing them buildings, but that's not something that we, typically tend to ask. So, do we always 100% know if they're qualified or not? We don't. How can you help us, kind of get to that next step to kind of see if they really are qualified to buy something?
Right. And, I'm going to make an assumption that many times, you've probably only talked to them over the phone at first, or even via email or LinkedIn or some other avenue. You haven't actually seen them in person during some of your initial conversations. And how do you ask somebody over the phone, like, what does your credit score look like? How much cash do you have in the bank? I don't think I would tell that information to anybody, right on the first get-go. But
Right.
Let's say they ask you to look for 5 properties in the $1 to $5 million range, and they give you, a few different parameters. Maybe they're looking for a single tenant, or they're looking for office flex or multifamily. Nothing's been narrowed down yet. You, as their representation, is not going to have any problems asking them questions like, if you're buying multifamily, are you interested in 10 units, 15 units, 100 units, to help align some parameters with what you might be able to show them, even if it's off market or on market for sale, right? Mm-hmm. We're not going to ask them, what does their bank account look like? And have they filed bankruptcy over the last 10 years? Right. So what I always say, and I've got new partner that I'm working with, Keegan Finley here, who's also a CCIM, by the way. What we've always discussed on any type of project that we're working on where somebody like you may call us. We will ask those tough questions for you. We don't necessarily have the capability yet to quote unquote pre-qualify them. But honestly, a pre-qualification is so esoteric in the first place that it really doesn't hold a lot of water at the end of the day, because there's so many more factors that we look at when has at it. But you would be surprised at what people tell us when, we ask them about their financial situation. And I'm actually shocked sometimes on what they'll tell us. So we always like to set up a face-to-face meeting if possible, just to give them a comfort level to show that, I'm not a robot, and that we know what we're doing. But a lot of times it's just through an initial phone call. And I just ask something simple like, how does your credit look? And then I shut my mouth. I know if that's probably impossible for me, but I let them talk and they just keep going.
So I should wait to buy my car until after close, or should I do it before?
Well, yeah, it depends on what kind of car, right?
Industrial is in favor. Multifamily type properties are in favor. What are you seeing in the market as it relates to product type? And what's hot, what's not, and what's your credit unions? Do they have some property types that they don't necessarily want to look at?
Great question, and it changes with the wind, right? So industrial's always been in favor since the day I started in this business, since the day I bought my own industrial flex building. I love it, and I love to lend on it. It's interesting, though, a lot of those types of buildings have some shorter rotating leases. Rather than being a 5 to 10-year lease, they might be 3 years. But when you go back and look at the rent rolls, you can see longevity. The tenants move in and they don't move out. So I think that's a really nice product. Retail, even some of the retail shops that are kind of off the beaten path seem to be pretty desirable. Retail is a strong asset class in the United States. But again, it does come down to lease lengths. Nobody wants to lend on a building that potentially has a huge rollover in 2 years, or where 50% or more of the space might be vacant in 2 years. So we do study leases really closely. We ask folks like you, if you're getting ready to list a property, study those leases, go talk to the tenants, see if there's some incentives to get them to renew early, if their leases are going to roll over to add value for your landlord, your owner that wants to list the property so he can get maximized value when he sells it. It makes it easier to lend on. There's a whole lot of things. I know sometimes that's impossible because, people can't predict the future, right? But this is a gambling game. I mean, we're all in it to win it, but it goes like this. So I feel like,
yeah, it's some great advice, and oftentimes brokers sometimes are a little bit lazy, and they don't go to that next level.
Take it to the next level, and not only will your seller make more money, but guess what? You make more money. It's all about you, So, but medical office is great. Office is still a bit challenging. We are seeing occupancy go up. The one thing that we're noticing that's different is the leases are shorter. Even if a new tenant moves in, say, over the last year, this year, they're not really signing 5 or 10-year leases typically. They kind of want to see how things go. But one thing that my underwriting team does is we look at the initial start date of their lease. If it was pre-COVID and they're still there, that means they are just hopping along just the same as always, right? If they signed post-COVID, that tells me the same thing, that they needed the space. So, you kind of have to look at timelines and, not just look at the fact that it's office, because there's a lot of hidden factors that we can look at to say, okay, they're here to stay. And we don't really need to worry too much about them going 100% remote again. It probably won't happen. So, but the cash flow has to work. And then another asset class that's been coming on our radar lately is self-storage. It's really unique because it's a credit card business. and you can't get through the gates if your rental payment's late. They won't let you in. Right. You got to put your credit card in the slot in order to get in. So you're going to get paid. If the credit card is maxed out, the gates aren't going to open. They're going to come up with plan B and maybe contact the owner later. But that has been a pretty decent asset for us to lend on. Really enjoy working with folks in that arena. And then the single tenant net leased, absolute net lease buildings seem to be fairly nice to work on as well right now, where there's some sort of corporate guarantee, or maybe a parent guarantee entity that may have been family owned but is now being purchased by a conglomerate of, a particular type or industry. So that seems to be a really nice asset. Some of the ones that we're having tough times with are stores that just sell, inexpensive goods, pharmaceutical products, things that are very readily available online, within 2.5, 3 hours of a delivery car coming to your front door. But, we look at every project and look at it case by case. We're probably not going to lend on a restaurant whose parent company, hasn't been doing well. But if that happens, we'll take a look at same store sales because maybe that particular restaurant is flourishing because of its location. So there's always something to balance out the opportunity for us. We are a pretty open book. And I think if you ask anybody that's done business with us, we'll lay it out, we'll just lay it out and try to mitigate.
Sure. So, all right. So we kind of talked a little bit about product type. How about geographical location? Does it have to be in a major city? Will you guys look at tertiary and your secondary and tertiary type locations?
So for
because I would assume, right? I was just going to go there.
For my credit unions, membership is key to be able to borrow from us. You do not have to be a member up front. We can help you select a credit union to join. So, but we can go as far west as Oklahoma City, and kind of across the Midwest over to Virginia Beach. We're getting ready to open up an office in the DC. Actually, I think we announced the opening today. I'm sure my company did a LinkedIn post, so I'll have to dig that up.
Leslie, I want to stop you, and I'm gonna ask that question again.
Really, a gamut, really, from Oklahoma through Texas all the way over to the East Coast.
So, Leslie, so we just talked about product type and industrial office, self-storage, which the self-storage I 100% get because as Americans, we're holding on to more and more stuff. And, so there is always going to be a constant need for more of that type of product.
Like, do I need this?
It's a nice looking car. So, you kind of shifting the focus to call it, geographic location. And are there areas that are more attractive? Because I know a lot of credit unions tend to be in, maybe secondary or tertiary type locations, in smaller hometowns. So, what's kind of the feeling on that?
So there are thousands of credit unions in the United States, and one of the things that ties them all together is that they have shared branching. So like if I belong to a credit union here in Central Ohio and I'm out traveling the national parks in California, I'm able to go and do my banking at a credit union there under the premise of shared banking at no additional cost. So that's kind of the miracle of that. And even if I were in New Zealand, I could go to a New Zealand credit union and do my banking there. So that's a pretty neat thing. Now, as far as our group, we have a little over 150 credit unions that participate in our business and commercial real estate lending platform. Our furthest western region is Oklahoma City. So if you're a borrower living in California and buying a building in California, I wouldn't be the girl that you would call, but maybe you're looking at a project in Arkansas or Texas or Oklahoma or Tennessee. Those are all areas that the company I work for covers, which is pretty incredible, all the way through the Midwest and then over to the East Coast, to Virginia Beach. And I think this week we just announced our newest office, which would be in the Washington, D.C. area, Maryland area. So we recently picked up multiple credit unions in that region that want to use our expertise for commercial lending. And so we start lending. And
so, Leslie, we kind of talked about existing structures. Do you guys loan on new construction?
so the short answer is yes, but you would be surprised how many times we get asked to discuss a construction project, and the person that wants to build the building isn't prepared. And what I mean by that, really, it's very simple. They don't have their budget put together. They haven't hired an architect. They don't know who they're going to use, and they don't even know where the land is located. So,
It's kind of hard.
but yeah, well, I mean, but if it's a sophisticated project and it's a smaller construction loan and it's not speculative, we will definitely take a look at it with a magnifying glass. We want to make sure that all the contingencies are considered with the cost of tariffs and steel and construction materials. We, need to see liquidity, in case there's project overruns. How is that going to be managed? I mean, we're going to build in a reserve and contingency, but construction's really tricky. So we look at it with kid gloves. Is I guess, if you said, give me 3 words or 5 words, we look at it with kid 7 words. That's what I would say.
Gotcha. Understand. Well, I appreciate your time, and really, it was really good to see you again and have you on the podcast. So if I have somebody that is in need of a loan, where can they find you?
So I can broadcast my phone number.
Perfect.
If you'd like.
Yes.
So, and probably LinkedIn might be the easiest way to find me. I just joined LinkedIn about a late 2023.
And killing it, by the way.
Thank you. I love writing stories. I like to talk about success with other people, and my contact information is on there. So assuming that I can see my name is spelled correctly on the screen, but there is only one Leslie A. Biskner, CCIM, on LinkedIn. So I think I would be easy to find, and I would love to set up a Teams meeting with anybody who wants to reach out. And if you're local in the Midwest or even someplace I'm traveling to next, I'm glad to, drive by and meet with you in your city as well.
That's great. Well, once again, thank you for being on, and you know where to find Leslie. And that concludes another episode of Straight from the Loading Dock.
Thank you. It's been so much fun, George. I appreciate you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.